So, welcome everybody to a subject which is perhaps controversial in Sweden, being seen and heard in schools. So, my name is Katarina Hanssens Carlsson, and I'm the founder of Global Leadership Schools and Teachers World, transforming schools globally. And with me today is Michael Herberry, and he's a former colleague and friend. Would you like to introduce yourself, Michael?
Thank you, Katarina. And it's a big pleasure to have this conversation with you and to meet you again. It was a couple of years ago, but nice catching up. And my background is from the beginning in the care and treatment perspective, you can say. I was a CBT therapist and worked for many years with treatment of depression and all kinds of problems, so to say. And but during the last years, I've been working with organizational psychology in a kind of broad context, learning and development assignments connected to big organizations as well as smaller projects. But there's always been a learning aspect, and I've been coaching a lot during my years and created some learning platforms, models, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's all connected in a ambition to transform. You mentioned transformation, and that's kind of the most wonderful things to be able to transform, if it's so organization or if it's an individual or a family, to the next level. Mm.
Transformation. Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so let's take our first question. Are our schools in Sweden child-centered schools? Do we focus on the children? What do you say, Michael?
Well, you gave me this question a couple of days ago, and I've been thinking about it, and uh, I think the question, at least when we talk about the Swedish context, should be seen in a larger perspective to be fully understood. And because in one hand, I think that we have this collective culture in Sweden that have uh, created a kind of environment in one way. And then on the other hand, we are a very individual people.
Yes.
Uh, in many aspects, we are like the most equal and people in the world. And also, that I think that there's always a big bit of a confusion. It creates a confusion at times that the values of the individual is in the center of everything in one aspect, but also it's like the collective aspect of it. And I think we have, if you look back in time, I think we have gone back and forth because we have a long history of, I think, the democratic development and the schools. Like we have this we call folkhögskola in Sweden, folk schools, where it's like almost 150 years ago we started to create uh, different kind of environments and structures to educate people. And and one can argue that that kind of initiative was very from the need of the people, but it was also like kind of from the state to be able to what do the people need, the social society that we are a big aspect of. So I think we have gone back and forth. And is it child-centered? Uh, it's a tricky question because we had for some years ago. I mean during the uh, like 20 years ago and stuff like that, when we had started to get a lot of problems with conflicts at school and stuff like that. We were Some say that we had too much freedom for the students, and
Mhm.
they should not only been educated about their rights, but what they should contribute with as well, the obligations. So the obligations and the right discussion is like the individual and the collective discussion. And and I think on this day, because what we talk about now is that we had maybe too little choice in the 80s, and then we changed the school during the 90s with maybe too many choices. And now we're back in a situation where we should maybe not have this educational system where we pay for education that doesn't benefit the society. So they take away a lot of creative schools and stuff like that. So why do I paint this broad picture? Well, because I think that's the conflict back and forth, the individual, the right, the obligations, and back and forth. And I think we're in a crossroad right now where we need to combine those things. And in some aspect, I think, yes, it's central around the individual because we got the children rights, we got the democrat, we got all of these rights that we talk about. But the way we address them, I think, can be held down to one thing, and that's the purpose.
Good.
What is the purpose? Is the individual the purpose? Is the society the purpose? So we have to have a discussion. What is the purpose? Because we can add a lot of rules, regulations, but if the purpose is not clear, I think that's the trick question.
Yeah.
I don't know if it answered your question but right away, but at least I painted the complexity of it, I guess.
Exactly. It's not necessarily a yes or no question, but I am going to say no. I'm going to say no. Why would I say no? Why do I think that children in Sweden are not necessarily seen and heard? Because the system is academic. And in my experience, Michael, only 30% of each class, so that's sometimes about 10 children, are academic.
Mm.
But what about the other children? Do they feel seen and heard? And I'm not sure that the academic children feel seen and heard either. But we presume that children want to learn academic subjects, but that's a huge presumption. I think if you ask a child, what do I want from school? Well, they would say, if they're very young, before year 7, they probably say, well, I want my teacher to discover me, to find out what my brilliance is. And I want to tell her or him my brilliance. So according to Dr. George Land, we are actually dumb-downing children in school. His NASA research showed us that that children up to the age of 7 were operating from 98% creative genius. By the time they're 10, it's 30%. By the time they're teenagers, which is crucial, it's 12%. And by the time these same children are adults, it's 2%. So what are we doing in schools? This is the United States, I understand. The same thing is going on here. I've taught in the United States, I've taught in England, I've taught in Europe, I've taught in many, many different schools. And this is what I've discovered, that the children are, and students later on, don't feel seen and don't feel heard. Maybe 1 or 2 of the top students feel seen and heard, and the ones who are not doing very well feel seen and heard, but maybe not in the best way either. So why should we see and hear children? Because they know their brilliance better than we do. And schools, Michael, you talked about the purpose. The purpose of schools, for me, is to discover every single child's brilliance. Okay, so the next question.
Well, can I just respond to that? Because I think
yes, please.
I think you put up some very interesting topics, and I think that the academic aspect, you said that we are all not students that want to study further on. And I think that that's so true. And I think that comes back to the way we measure things constantly. And we go wrong. It kills the creativity in some aspects. Yes. And also that we have this kind of a wave of ambition to everyone should study in the academic. And that has been so for many years. And it's first now that we talked about this, we call is it vocational studies,
Yes.
yrkeshögskola? And that's something that's coming right now. So that's a movement that I think people have heard about. So I'm not defending it because, but I think that as I said, now we're in a crucial point because we can no longer uh, way act in the way we did. So I think that the vocational academy and trainings that are coming right now is very welcome in some
Yes.
aspect. And also the question about the new public management system as a whole, where we measure everything. What's the backflip of that? I think that's just connected to what you say. And I also want to say one more thing about, because that's been a struggle for me for many years, to the ambition and the creativity that young children have at young age, and then we see the lack of motivation as they become teenager and further on.
Yeah.
And we should also take to aspect the children development stages, because they will always be where they are in opposition against everything, uh, children. And I think that's a big challenge for us to kind of, how do we keep that in school in a learning environment, because we will always have teenagers that gonna, no, I'm not gonna do that, that doesn't want to fit. That's a part of the growing aspect, I guess. And but I think that we have to take that to account. And yeah, it was just some small aspects.
Yes. Very important too. So, and it leads us to our next question. Most schools claim that they prepare students for life. Is this the case in Swedish schools, Michael?
Well, I think that we talked about the social engineering art in some aspect, and I think that's where we miss the individual. That's where we miss the things to be heard and to be listened and to give them. Because when I looked back at my school, I went to the school during the 80s, and I remember we were looking at movies about the cooperative movement, about the grocery stores, and kind of, you could say, a social engineering things that we were learning in school, but never once did we learn about the entrepreneurial spirit, how we uh, create our own business and stuff like that. That was later on in late high school when I studied in music and theater, and or if I'm going to be able to live on this, to be able to make, because I want to be work with theater and music, I have to uh, sell myself. I have to be an entrepreneur. I have to work outside the box, and so that's kind of one aspect of preparing the students, where the social engineering maybe put some kind of ceiling on the ambition, in its ambition to everyone should get along. We kind of kill the creativity, and that's not really the reality. uh, so yeah, so I would say no to that, because we're not really
We don't.
prepared them, and that comes back to the purpose. Do we discuss in a wider or more existential aspect the purpose of learning? Why do we learn? What do we learn? How do we learn? And so, yeah, if there's a yes or no question, maybe a no.
I know. Okay. I agree with you. I don't think in this day and age of technology, fast moving technology, I don't know anybody who can really keep up with it. I would say we are not preparing our young people for schools. I mean, I talked to somebody yesterday and he said, well, schools will soon be um, soon be useless in a way because children can go on Google, they can go on social media, they can find out facts. We are a whole world of information and artificial information. That's our world at the moment. And are we preparing children for that? No, I don't think so. And how many jobs will be taken over by robots anyway? And so for me, the child's natural brilliance, natural, even entrepreneurial brilliance is crucial from a very, very early age. So, as I said before, 30% of the class are academics. Okay, so prepare them for college and university, but not necessarily the whole class. At least 30%, I think up to 60% are entrepreneurial in my experience. So when I do entrepreneurial trainings in schools, children love it. They go, oh, finally, a lesson that's all about me. It's about us. It's about our ideas. And as long as they haven't been too dumbed down, they are very enthusiastic, full of ideas, and natural entrepreneurs. So I think at least 60%. And what about the others? Entertainers, sports people. But we need to find every single child's brilliance before we prepare them for life. How can we prepare them for life if we don't know who they are, what their brilliance is, what their natural entrepreneurial brilliance is, or what they love to do? We need to have that information. And Global Leadership Schools is now creating an app and a training to bring out the brilliance in teachers and bring out the brilliance in schools. So, next question. So, every child desires to be seen for their spark. How can we achieve that in schools? Be seen for their spark.
Well, I think everyone agrees that once we feel the spark for something, we can work for hours without the time stops to mean something to us. We go into this that like the psychology Mihaly called the flow state, and I think everyone can relate to that, the kind of flow, and that's something that we should. There's an energy in that, and how do we create this kind of sparking, flowing environment that not should be misled to be something that is always fun, because it could be a challenge is kind of fun in a way that it likes, oh, I need to solve a problem. So because there is a bit of a problem when we talked about, you said that all the information is out there, people are going on the internet, and one aspect of that is that it's very easy to be negative about the technique, but how could we use it in a good way, but also what's the danger of people getting all the algorithms and get their own little universe, and if we don't have that purpose of what is it to educate a human, what is it to be a responsible human, in the context of everything is available, I can create my own little small universe of purpose. That how did it connect to the world as a whole? I think that's the challenge of education, and that's not just to be an entrepreneur to do exactly what you want, because it's kind of why do you do it, to question, and a good coach question the benefits for the whole in everything that you feel the spark for, I guess. So that's one take of it. But to understand the spark, the flow, the motivational basis, and that's kind of my own research and my own occupations circulated around that a lot. And a model that I usually come back to is the self-determination theory, SDT, and maybe we can provide us with a link later on. And that talks about three bases for this kind of spark or motivation, and it's a feeling of belonging. What do you belong to? Do you have a belonging to your family, to your class, to the mission of what you should achieve, or to the colleague, or to your classmates? Or do you have a Greta in your room that wants to change the world every second? Or where is the level of belonging for you? And if you don't have any belonging, that could be some of the purpose that the teaching need to focus on. And the other one is autonomy. Do you have any freedom to choose? And in some way, I think you were touched on that, and we had that in former conversations as well. What's the level of autonomy? Because sometimes in life, I prefer freedom and not safety. But But on the other hand, we have maybe colleagues that need to have very clear frames, and children that need to have very clear frames. You can say low autonomy. And sometimes you have to like think outside the box. What's the big autonomy here? So it's not about it to maximize out from each individual. What is the belonging level? What is the autonomy level? And then the competence. Benny, do you contribute? What are you good at? How can we do more of that? And I think that's what I hear you do as well. What are you sparking for? To see everyone to be able to contribute. So yeah, I would like to make a shout out to the SDT model because it can help us on the sparkling adventure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So how do we bring out the spark in children? Well, first of all, we need to bring out the spark in teachers because in my experience, teachers teach the same subject over and over and over, year after year after year, and they get a bit bored. So if the teacher's bored, the teacher will not bring out your spark. So we've got to bring out the spark of teachers. It took me 20 years to regain my brilliance, to regain my spark. But what I have trainings with global leadership schools now to bring out the brilliance in teachers, to bring out the brilliance in students from a very, very early age. So we start off with a natural spark. If you ask like a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, what do you want to do? This was a response from a Swedish child. Well, I'm going to be an astronaut and I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to learn sign language. And I said, as a typical adult, do you mean all a typical adult? Do you mean it all at once? And he said, of course. So,
Of course.
yeah, children know no limits. And so this is a very real example. Would we then say, okay, so Jan, you want to learn to be an astronaut? Well, so I think maybe some extra lessons in physics, maybe in mathematics, maybe in biology since you want to become a doctor, and make that his theme. I want to be an astronaut, so I have to really study these subjects. And the other subjects, for example, I don't like French very much. No big deal. He can choose to go to French, and maybe he can choose not to go to French, but there is a purpose. It's not about saying, oh, children, do whatever you like. No, we did that in the 60s. And
Yes.
I remember in England, children were painting all over the walls, and the teachers were saying, oh, that's so beautiful. It was graffiti. So children need boundaries, but we
Yes.
need to see them and hear them, bring out their brilliance, find their specific, unique brilliance of every child, and then foster that all the way through school. All right.
Beautiful. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you, Michael. So, the last question: how should we resolve the problem of violent or disruptive behavior in schools? It's a big problem, and it's getting bigger.
Yes, it's getting bigger, and you talked about the role of the parents or about the teachers earlier on that we because they are crucial to the students, of course, and I think that the parents are crucial to the kids.
Yes.
And we have had a discussion also back and forth that and I touched upon it a little bit earlier, that we need to focus on the children's obligations. You cannot just have all your rights and do whatever you want. But no. Maybe it should not be focused on the children, because they are a result of the parents. So how do we focus on the parents to in an early dialogue catch up those? Because I work with social working projects as well. And we know very early on when we can see the signs of both the parents and the social and the kids where there might be problems. And so early early interventions in some way, but also to have like what is the frames, what is the purpose? Because once again, do we have a purpose for something? And we can have that's kind of the frame for everything. But if the purpose is very vague or very hard to describe, so and also to focus on the parents in different kind of way, and that's a very huge. How do we do that? Uh, but also work on a long term with all the interventions that we do, because we have this discussion here. Should we put a lot of efforts into the ones who act rough in the school, and how do we do it? Do we move them to different schools? Should it be in the big class as well? We all have the different methods as well all the time, and I think what we lack is like a long term view on how we do things, because we can do an intervention early on that gets the results maybe very long ahead in time. Uh, we have something here in South Sweden that's called the Malmö Festival. It's a festival where we have like they have in every city, a lot of people, a lot of music and stuff to eat, food trucks. And I met at this big festival, I met a young teenager. He's not teenager anymore, but I had him in a group where we worked about aggression and aggressive replacement training groups and different kind of when I was working. And he was one of the really bad guys. He actually destroyed my car once. He stole everyone's shoes. He was in a fight. He was a real bad guy, so to say. And when I met him at this festival, I thought, oh my God, he's so angry at me because I have to throw him out every time, uh, like 10 years ago. And he came up to me and he gave me a hug. And he did all of this, all kind of, hello, what? And I was actually a bit scared because now I'm going to get a knife in me or something. And he introduced me to his friends. Oh, this is Michael from Rosengård. Oh, and he looked at me as it was a very good experience, even though I evaluated him as a problem person. Uh, at, but when we looked at it, he actually came back every Thursday to the group, even though he was thrown out every time. So in the context of where he was, this was the safest place for him.
Yes.
The family wasn't that supportive. The school, I don't know how his social network was, but this was the safe place. And also, I was the one who set the boundaries. You
Yes.
should not do that. You have to go. You apologize or you leave this place. I'm not going to accept you being here. Get out. And I was very rough at that time. And when he was almost so close, he wanted to hit me sometimes, but he went out. And then, of course, he destroyed something on the way out. But that was kind of one example. I have many teenagers like that. But what do I bring from that? That is, we need to set some boundaries and not be afraid to set boundaries.
Yes.
We need to work on a long term to see that there is no quick fix.
Good.
Uh, so that's kind of just something I put on the table here.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Sounds as if you did a really, really good job with this young man, because he wasn't, for me, he wasn't a bad person. He was just desperate, angry. He probably
Yeah.
had a lot of rage, but you said to him, "This is okay behavior, but you cross the line and you're out. You're out." Every time you said out, you gave him a boundary. He didn't have those boundaries before. And he respected you, even if he damaged your car. Maybe he was angry with you. Maybe he was like, okay, everybody throws me out. Maybe there was a very angry, very, very sad little boy inside that guy. And he was angry enough, had enough rage to destroy your car. But you taught him a lesson over and over again. I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm not going to tolerate this. So you became for him, you became his friend. So thank you, Michael, for that.
Thank you.
All right. So what do I say? How do we how do we how do we resolve the problem of violent and disruptive children in schools? Well, let's take with disruptive first, because there's at least, in my experience, two or three disruptors in every school. Sometimes they're funny disruptors. They have a great sense of humor. They make the class laugh, but they disrupt the lesson because they want to. You know why? They're bored. They are so bored out of their minds. Usually they're very bright, but they don't like school very much. But they love interaction and they love making a mess of things. So, what do I do as a teacher with these students? I take them out, not to punish them, because they're not wrong, they're not bad. And I say to them, do you know that you're a leader? And usually they're very surprised when I say that. They go, no, I'm not a leader. And I say, yeah, you are leading the class. I'm a leader too, because I'm a teacher, but you're a leader too, and you lead them down.
Yeah.
Sometimes you lead them up with your humor, but would you like to know how to lead them up the whole time? And usually they say, yeah, I would. So usually I do a consultation with them. What is your identity as a leader? What is your driving purpose as a leader? What is your vision as a leader? What stops you as a leader? And because they get so much of this attention, they start to become really good leaders in the class. So those disruptive leaders can be transformed. Now, what do you do when a child comes in, a student comes in to the school with a gun, willing to kill their classmates, willing to kill a teacher that they hate? Basically, it's suicide. These students are in rage. The anger's gone way, way, way beyond normal anger. They've had years and years and years of so-called Monday mornings that they hate. And they know if they kill somebody, it's the end of their life as well, in some form. So they're willing to kill themselves. Why? Because they hate their lives. They hate school. Maybe they hate their family. They're full of hate, and nobody has listened. And we need to take that, as you said before, Michael, we need to take that at the first disruption, because these students give us signals all the way along, and they're red flags. And you need to listen to the first red flag when they're 7 years old and they go, I don't feel seen, I don't feel heard, my teacher is not listening to me. That's when we need to listen up and take care, because and pay attention, because there's never ever been so much violence and so much disruptions in schools, including Swedish schools, in the world. So these students are saying something. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, students who are listening, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you feel seen, and I don't think you feel heard. And it's time we listened. I'm not saying you get to take over the school. No, 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 no. But we see and hear you. That's what I think is the solution.
Wow. Can I reply to that? Because I agree with
Please.
everything you say, Katarina.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
I think there is, within the psychology or within the behavioral theory, there is this kind of escalation ladder. I think everyone noticed this kind of 10 steps down. And you can actually see those steps where it's like an argument, where the conversation is polarized, when you take this you build like different kind of groups against each other, and all of the way down in the cellar, as you described. I don't care if I lose the job, just as long as Katrina also do it, because or if I kill because I'm going to ruin my life. It's the way down in the escalation ladder, and that there are signs on the way. And that brings me to another topic, that is the knowledge of conflict resolution, conflict theory, because I have had like so many workshops and lectures about conflict resolution in schools. And why do I have that? Well, that's one of the few things that they don't get from the academy. And that's one of the things that they need the most. Because when principals and teachers call me, they say, we have this kind of class, we have this kind of problem, we need to be better at conflict resolution. I know it's a bit better now than it was 20 years ago, yes, but still it's not a subject in the teacher academy school that is they put that much attention to it that they should, because I still to this day have these workshops in conflict resolution all over the country at least and there is a big need for that. So I think there's we could prepare people to be able to handle conflicts better, but also to see this kind of escalation ladder steps to be able to prevent this. And the last thing I want to add to this is I think it's a example. I think we have touched upon this earlier in our other discussions we had. I mentioned to you once to find a spark in a problem guy, and he wasn't going to school. He was people were afraid of him, and I had a conversation with him, conversation with his parents, with his teachers, and finally I found that his spark was skateboarding.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember this example.
Yeah, I do.
And okay, so I talked to the principal and his teacher. Okay, could we do this that he could take some time on school to prepare a skateboard workshop for the young kids?
Yay.
And that was a thing for him to go back to school and do this. And once he had these workshops for the young children, something started to change with him. For the first thing, he did it very good. He learned all these tricks, and he was a good teacher. He was a leader, just as you said. And he came back to school. And I remember when we had this evaluation meeting with his parents and some from the school, and he said that he had been at some kind of collecting some pizza at some shop or McDonald's. I don't remember, but he went there with some friends, and there came a small guy to him and said, "Oh, there is the skateboard teacher." And he called me skateboard teacher. Oh, what a peep! But he was kind of, why? What can they look on me as the skateboard teacher? Because some month ago they were afraid of me. They ran away when they saw me, and now they point with love and call me the skateboard teacher. And that is a way to bring out the spark, bring out the enthusiasm, and to stop the escalation downwards. And and that's the long term, because someone can say, no, we should not put time for a skateboard workshop. It doesn't have to do with what we learn in school. But that's almost like the guy that I throw out every first day. You have to work outside the box and be patient. And so I just want to give that example as well, because I know we have talked about it earlier.
Brilliant. I love that example so much. It's exactly what I'm talking about. You saw him, you heard him, you gave him back his self-respect, and you showed him that he had something to give. And these young children that he actually taught adored him, right? So
Yeah. He was
he
a leader.
was somebody. You know, we have Jantelag in Sweden that says you're nobody. Well, doesn't exactly say that. It says you're not better than anybody else, which is true. But there's so many people who think I'm nothing, and that's a lie. Everybody has a brilliance. Everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a unique gift to the world. And you helped
Beautiful.
him bring out this unique gift. And if we don't know our unique gift, then our life doesn't have so much meaning. But you gave him meaning again. So I'm sure this young man has changed his life since then. All right. Well, we could go on and on and on. But first of all, I'd like to know, Michael, for the viewers, how do we contact you?
Well, there's social media, but I got the traditional homepage actually, michaelhugberg.se. And we can provide with the link down, I guess, in the comment field. So Michael Hugberg at SE. And there's also LinkedIn.
exactly. And for me, it's LinkedIn. And normally I'm Katarina Hanssens Carlsson, but on LinkedIn, I'm Catherine Carlsson, Catherine with a K, Carlsson with a C and two S's. So, what I'd like to encourage you to do, viewers, is come with your comments. You don't have to agree with us. It doesn't matter. We love different points of views. So if you're a parent, if you're a student, if you're a teacher, if you're a principal, if you care about children in schools being seen and heard, please comment. And thank you so much. Thank you, Michael, for being with us today. And thank you, viewers, for watching. And
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
thank you.